one of the things that people find interesting about Hinduism is that it is one of the world religions that is rich and completely filled with female conceptions of God. Now, this is something that in a lot of cultures is almost unthinkable, and yet we find in India, as in a few other religions as well, but particularly strongly here, there are goddesses, and those goddesses are seen often as the ultimate reality of the universe. They're seen as strong, as powerful, often as independent women. We think of Durga, the goddess, who is effectively a kind of a warrior. She's a queenly figure, she carries weapons. And the stories that we hear about the goddess Durga are about her strength, how she is able to protect and save the gods and the world from the forces of darkness. We hear stories as well about other goddesses. Saraswati, who's a goddess of culture, of literature, beauty, and the arts. What a wonderful figure to exemplify all that is wonderful about civilization and culture itself. We see goddesses like Lakshmi, who represents good fortune itself, who represents the idea of all the good that life can give us, the blessings not only that women bring with children, but also in shaping house and home, that women bring as fortune to business and to society in general. So we've got a range of different roles. Woman as the protector, woman as the warrior, woman as the keeper of the home, and woman as the person who exemplifies art and beauty. What's interesting about this is that people often assume that having goddesses makes a tradition positive towards women, i.e. makes it the case that people automatically accord women a higher status in society. But this is often where students who want to study the relationship between feminism and Hinduism start asking questions. It's really interesting to see that this is a tradition that does have female divinity at its heart, and yet also a tradition that is not always positive about affording women a position of power and importance at the center of society. So if we look at traditional Vedic conceptions of how society should work, if we look, for instance, at the Manu Dharma Shastra, known as the Laws of Manu, a text that tells us how society should function. The text tells us very clearly that women cannot be trusted, that they need to be controlled by men, that they should worship their husband as if he was a god. And in this context, where women are clearly seen as disempowered, of less significance, that can make Hinduism sound like a religion that, in contrast to a religion of goddesses, is a religion that actually dominates women. Which is true? Is it a feminist religion? Is it an anti-feminist religion? Well, of course, the story is always more complicated than that. It's interesting to see that on the one hand, Hinduism has many texts which have in some ways a very disempowering approach to women. It also is something, though, that can contain very positive messages. A lot of work by female scholars have noticed the way that Hinduism is eager often to affirm the way that women really do shape the domestic world, the home, children, family, and are center to people's happiness in that world of home, which we go back to every day. In some ways, even Manu says, if a woman is not happy, the whole home cannot be happy and society cannot thrive. So in many ways, Hinduism is a religion that affirms the centrality of woman in the house, in the home, at the heart of life. Others have said, well, wait a second, what about women who don't want to do that? What about the autonomy and freedom of women to do other things, to be a warrior like Durga, or to meditate in the mountains in the Himalayas like Parvati, or to become an abandoned lover of God like Radha? There's so many other roles. Are women really still allowed to pursue those roles as well? Well, it's an interesting question. And in fact, scholars are still doing research on whether Hindu women really are empowered to be like Durga, to be like these strong, independent goddesses with their own journey. Certainly Saraswati, for instance, has been an inspiration for many women in the arts. And I think we can see that in some parts of India, women who worship Durga and the strong goddesses do get power from this. Although there are debates about the way that in some cases, women identified with the goddess are seen as women who you have to protect, cloister away, and actually who therefore lose their freedom in society. In some ways, this is an ongoing debate. It's something that scholars are still exploring today, and anthropologists are doing more work on the ground to understand how Hinduism as a set of ideas about women really maps onto the reality of women's lives in India today. In some ways, it's perhaps worth looking at Hinduism as a cultural tradition that contains some of the world's most empowering, most impressive images of strong, independent women. The challenge is to understand how that cultural tradition maps onto reality, and maybe how we can help women have even more access to the empowering possibilities of the goddess herself.